I Wanted to Be a Pilot, The Making of a Tuskegee Airman by Franklin J. Macon with Elizabeth G. Harper. Introduction. My name is Franklin J. Macon. Today I'm 94 years old. I didn't realize it when I was your age, but I was part of something big, history. Now, don't you dare close this book just because I said history. I promise you'll laugh. I never planned it. At the magic age of 10, I carried a spitball and a rubber band to all school assemblies. I drove Mama's car up the railroad bank and made my own orange crate airplane. On Halloween, my friends and I placed dried leaves between the screen and the main door at the neighbor's house. Back then, no one locked the doors. My job was to ring the doorbell and run. The air sucked the leaves right in the living room. Oh, what a mess. Why did I do these things? I just thought, why not? I got blamed for everything anyways. Let me tell you another thing. Guess who got the cleanup job? You guessed it, me. I also got the spanking. With all the shenanigans early on, no one thought I would one day become a pilot and an aircraft mechanic, but I did. I went to a famous flight school in Tuskegee, Alabama. I'll tell you more about it later. Who would have dreamed I'd meet scientists, generals, and astronauts? Who predicted I would research airplane crashes, find the problem, come up with solutions, and save lives? Not a single soul, but I did exactly that. After hearing all of that, you probably think I love school. Actually, I hated school. When I was young, school was miserable. I didn't even like my birthday because of school. My birthday is August 4th, 1923. I knew summer ended 4 short weeks after Mama cooked my birthday meal, and Aunt Lala made my birthday cake, angel food with strawberries. I repeated second grade. Reading was terrible. My math skills were atrocious. That means really, really bad. I couldn't solve an arithmetic problem like this one in upper elementary. 3,256 plus 3,256 plus 3,256. I would add that problem 15 different times and get 15 different answers. Numbers moved around on a piece of paper like rabbits hopping around the woods. Letters jumped around on me, too. My classmates read like champs by second grade. I figured it out around 7th grade. You see, 90 years ago, no one understood things like dyslexia. It's a learning disability that makes reading, math, and spelling very hard. I never knew I had it, but I did. It was one of the many obstacles I had to overcome. I preferred working with my hands. Paper and pencil tasks made me bored, probably because I could not do them. If you're like me, I challenge you to use your hands and create some of the projects in this book. School confused me, but that didn't mean I was dumb. Thankfully, I knew that. I fixed things. I made things. I was curious at times, and it got me in trouble. Still, school and what came with it made people think I was just flat stupid. It really frustrated me. I remember Mama calling me a failure, which really hurt me for years. It was the dyslexia that blocked my book learning. It was dreadful. Some teachers tried to help me out. Mama and Lala worked at helping me too. The bottom line, it was up to me. I needed to work hard, very hard, so I did. I decided to tell my story to encourage you. I want you to know the hardships happen. Oh boy, do they, but don't ever let it stop you. The dyslexia caused me to get very bored with school. Looking back, I understand the boredom caused me to get into a little mischief at times. I wanted to quit or at least skip school. Thankfully, I did not quit. Some adults thought I would never amount to anything. I proved them wrong. Today, people consider me part of history. Many even call me an American hero. You see, I trained at Tuskegee before it was over. I was flying the AT-6. But let me tell you, flying my AT-6 was the easy part. What I overcame to get there, oh, now that was a triumph. Here is my story. Chapter 1, Skeezick and the Parachute. My name is Franklin with an I. It used to be Franklin with a Y. Mama liked it that way. I wanted to be different, so I changed it. That was about 3rd grade. I can tell you today the Y was different. As one who never liked following the crowd, I should have kept the Y. Mama was right, as usual. Macon is my last name, but it should have been Banks. You see, Mama was really my great aunt. Her name was Maud Elizabeth Macon. Both of my great aunt's husbands passed away, so Mama and Aunt Ella moved in together. I called Aunt Ella Lala because I always heard my birth mother Eva call her Lala. The two great aunts took me in when I was 2 weeks old. My birth mother was a young teenager. I think she was around 14 when I was born. Her name was Eva Banks. My aunts told me I was born in Kansas City, Kansas. I'm pretty sure about this, even though I never had a birth certificate. Well, I didn't until I had to prove my citizenship to go into the military. My name was under births in the family Bible. In those days, family records were kept in the family Bible. That information as good as going down to the courthouse. You might think I was totally confused. My name was even mixed up in the family Bible. You see, Franklin Theodore and Franklin James in our Bible. Who knows? Maybe Mama and Aunt Lala picked a different name than my birth mother Eva. I don't know who made the decision for me to go live with my great aunts. I'm pretty sure it was my birth mother. In those days, family got together and had big conferences about these things. Eva was just too young to take care of me. We lived on Pine Street. I knew Eva, but I didn't realize she was my birth mother. I found out she was my mother when I was a teenager. I'll tell what little I know about her. I know Eva married a middleweight boxer named Ham Jenkins. They took me to Denver once in a while. I was little. I didn't know it was Denver, but it was. Ham and Eva swung me by their arms over the street curbs. They dressed me in an awful sailor suit. Eva and Ham bought me some little boxing gloves. Ham tried to teach me to box. It for sure wasn't for me. My other memory of Eva had to do with fireworks. I was around 4 or 5. It was the 4th of July. I set off a couple of fireworks on the front porch. I was playing with the matches I was not supposed to be touching. Oh, Mama and Aunt Lala shook their fingers at me. Franklin, no more fireworks. You'll blow up the house. I launched the whole bag at one time. You should have seen the show. Mama declared, no more fireworks for you, Franklin. Eva heard this, and she was not having it. She spent a whole $5 on new fireworks. She walked them down to our house and gave the entire bag to me. It was fabulous. We launched every one of those fireworks that night. I don't even need to spend time telling you about what kind of trouble I got in for that. The last time I saw Eva was 1931 or 1932. I don't remember exactly. She remarried and moved away. She would write letters to me and I would write to her. No one told me she was my mother. Years later, she died. I'm not sure how. She was young when she died, so I never really got to know her, but I never lacked love. Mama and Aunt Lala took very good care of me. I'm in my 90s now, so some things from my early years are hard to remember. I do remember my Skizik. Skizik was a very popular doll in the 1920s. I guess my aunts thought that old Skizik would be my favorite. I was about 4 when Mama gave that old doll to me. I don't know where she and Aunt Lala got the thing. I really didn't care for it. Then, one day, I figured out a perfect plan. Each night, Mama would say, now get your Skizik and take it to bed. If I didn't, she threw it in my bed anyways. Mama made me wear my old footy Buster Brown night clothes, too. I didn't like those either, but they did come in handy for my Skizik plan. I figured out my Skizik had pretty good aerodynamics. He parachuted beautifully. I got a hold of some cloth. I think I tore up a sheet. I made a parachute and tied it around my doll. I tossed it in the air. The doll floated down just as I had planned. I decided that's okay, but not too exciting. I need more height. I climbed right up on the house in my Buster Brown PJs and threw the doll off the back porch. That's why my footy pajamas came in handy. I didn't need any shoes, so I could just sneak out of the house. Yes, I climbed to the roof of the house. The trouble was, after every throw, I had to crawl back down to the ground to get my parachute. If I wanted to launch my Skizik again, I scrambled back up on the top of the roof. Being the innovative mind I was, I hooked a long string to my Skizik. I tossed it off the house. I stood right above my bedroom windows at the back of the house. I watched my Skizik parachute to the ground. I hauled it back up again with a rope. I guess that old doll wasn't so bad after all. People ask me today, how did you get on the roof? Well, That was never any trouble for a creative young man like myself. We had an old ladder in the garage. I put the bottom against the fence so it wouldn't slip and leaned the top against the roof. I climbed right above the main roof pinched too steep, so I stuck to the roof of my bedroom. Standing was more efficient than sitting. The parachute flew much, much better. I tossed the contraption in the air and let my skis fly. I had hours of entertainment. I engineered parachutes at an early age. I was good at it. You can do it too. I learned to make those old parachutes and kites from hanging around the Warden kids. They were the older kids who lived next door. When I was your age, a whole lot of adults thought a kid like me couldn't do anything creative. It wasn't because I had dyslexia. No one knew I had it. It was because of my color of my skin. My thought They thought I would not be able to engineer a simple parachute. They also thought I would never be able to fly. You see, when I was 2.5 years old in 1925, the Army War College released a study. It stated that because I was Negro, that's what they said back then, I wasn't smart enough, honest enough, hardworking enough, and many other things. It said I really could not do much of anything. Thankfully, I never listened to such ridiculous ideas. The Warden kids didn't either. I made all kinds of things, and so did the other kids in my neighborhood. We didn't pay attention to all that nonsense. We built things all the time. We even tried to fly. I'm proud to say my neighborhood was different from much of the country. It didn't have such problems. While much of the country fought the battle of segregation, our neighborhood worked together. The kids, whether black, Indian, Mexican, white, Chinese, or a combination of all the above, played together. I'm not even sure we realized our differences. Really? That is the way it should be. Neighbor helping neighbor. Now, don't get me wrong. Parts of the town were definitely segregated. The movie theater and the restaurants divided people by color and money. I never paid much attention because as a kid, the places where I spent time, like school and the neighborhood, were not split. Believe it or not, it made me somewhat of an outcast when I went to flight school later on in life. It never occurred to me that I would not be allowed to do certain things due to the color of my skin. Where I grew up, the only separation we had was at the beginning of the school day. The girls had to go in one door at school and the boys had to walk in the other door, but that was it. As soon as we entered the school, we all crowded in the hallway. In class, we sat in alphabetical order. Well, until I got moved into the front of the class, but that is a story for another time. Now I'm trying to remember the important people and events in my early years. Between the years of 0 and 4, Mama and Lala were the most important. I also know the Warren family, who live next door, changed my life. Around age 4, Aunt Lala and Mama left me with Irma and Hazel, the Warden girls. When they went to work, the Warden family had been ranchers. Grandpa Warden even shot with the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. That was the show where cowboys and Indians entertained people and showed them a way of life in the Old West. If I recall correctly, Irma and Hazel taught me my ABCs and how to count. They were older, probably around 12 or 15. When you're 4, you think that is really big stuff. They had a brother. His name was Bill. He liked building things and working on cars. I watched him like a hawk. The Wardens had an Uncle Bill, too. He was a little older, maybe 2 years older than Brother Bill. I became interested in all things mechanical because I had spent time hanging out with Uncle Bill and Brother Bill. Irma and Hazel let me tag along with them in town as well. Fortunately for me, the Warren girls had boyfriends that worked. Luckily for me, they clocked in at the Alexander Aircraft Company. I remember the hangar. The factory opened in the old north end of Colorado Springs, just off Fillmore Street. Originally, Alexander was a movie-making company. The company wanted airplanes to deliver their advertising films. No one looked them seriously when they ordered 26 airplanes. What did they do? What any innovative mind would do. They started to build their own airplanes. They were so good at it. In 1928, Alexander Aircraft manufactured more airplanes than any other factory in the world. The Warden girls drive me up to Alexander Aircraft. Their boyfriends were pilots. They took the girls flying. They couldn't leave me alone on the ground, so I flew too. That's right. No regulations back then. I would be right up there with them, just soaring through the air. That sure won't happen today, but it did in 1920, a 4-year-old on a pleasure flight. Oh man, those planes fascinated me. I didn't understand that Eagle Rock airplanes from Alexander Aircraft and other planes were new inventions. The Wright brothers took their first flight December 17th, 1903, just 20 years before I was born. They flew 852 feet in 59 seconds. In 1927, very few people drove automobiles. Can you imagine how they felt about flying an airplane? Mama and Aunt Lala had a car. The car I remember was our 1929 Nash. They bought it when I was a little older. It had a green body with black fenders. Before we got our Nash, the Wardens drove Model A's and Model T's. That's where I learned to drive. Brother Bill and Uncle Bill plopped me on their laps in the middle of the car's front bench. They worked the pedals and the gears while I hung the wheel to steer. I was a kid so long ago, our neighborhood shared only 4 telephones. We had one of the 4. To distinguish your ring from the neighbors, you memorized the pattern. Our pattern was 2 fast rings and a space. Then it repeated. To get our number, you lifted the handle to reach the operator. She would say, "Number, please." Then you asked for main 4061R. The neighbors had 3 fast rings. You waited for your ring pattern before you picked up the phone. Of course, all kids were tempted to listen in on adult conversations. You could hear anyone's conversation by picking up a phone. I jumped around a little when I tell about my life. I think it is because I'm 94 years of stories to share. I will do my best to get them in some sort of order for you. Now, back to flight. Airplanes frighten some people like my Aunt Lala. Flying didn't scare me one bit. It thrilled me. Brother Hall from church once told me, if people were meant to fly, they would have been born with wings. Of course, I had a smart response. I said right back, if you were meant to wear clothes, we would all have been born with them. He said, oh. Brother Hall also wanted to know what would happen if you had a flat tire on your airplane while flying. Back then, the wheels didn't retract. I said, pull up on a cloud and change it. Brother Hall said, oh. Can you believe it? Brother Hall believed me. My Aunt Lala and Mama, on the other hand, well, they knew I was being smart. Boy, did I get chastised about my fresh mouth for that comment. Now, when the Warden girls brought me to the airplane hangar, I asked tons of questions. I asked so many questions, a couple of the guys, Jimmy Donahue and Scott Wingson, remembered me. They remembered me 19 years later when I returned home from the military. Jimmy Donahue was a pilot and a jumper. He held the high-altitude parachute record for years. Scotch volunteered as a flying tiger when Japan invaded China before the United States entered World War II. We guessed Scotch joined because he was part Chinese and part American. His mom had been a missionary in China years before. More likely, he chose to fly because he was all aviator. If there was any chance of flying, Scotch signed up. Flight and airplanes captivated me. I wasn't alone. Charles Lindbergh prepared to make the first transatlantic flight May 21st, 1927. The Spirit of Lewis soared across the Atlantic in 33 and a half hours. With just one trip, Charles Lindbergh, nicknamed Lucky Lindy, became famous for the United States of Europe. I remembered hearing of this man, but I was busy making my own way as an aviator. It looked like all the odds were against me, even though I was only 4. I had dyslexia and didn't know it. I was black. It didn't matter to me, but it sure did to some in our nation. I could have used these obstacles as an excuse. No way. I refused. I say there is no excuse for making something of your life. I decided nothing would stop me. I was going to be a pilot.